In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, one of the most compelling villains in MCU history made his debut to not only take on the Guardians themselves, but also the idea of what it means to be a perfect citizen. Today, let us talk about the High Evolutionary and where his time in the MCU could take him in the future. Stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is DJ, and the High Evolutionary was easily one of the best parts of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. While Rocket's storyline throughout the movie was heart-wrenching, while Quill's tale of love for Gamora was heartbreaking, and while Drax's story with Mantis was heartwarming, the High Evolutionary showcased a brutality and destruction that somehow made him feel like the standout character of the film for me. Seriously, throughout all the emotion going on throughout the film, it was weirdly the High Evolutionary that kept me the most intrigued until the end. And really, how could you not be at least somewhat interested in him? He has the noble goal of a character like Thanos, yet the mind and powers of Kang the Conqueror. He's kind of an interesting amalgamation of a lot of the villains that we've seen in the multiverse saga so far. His goal to build a perfect civilization is really interesting to me. Not only that, but to see how his obsession over that goal has completely warped his mind throughout the entire film, that stuff is just so intriguing. To the point that, in the end, I was actually kinda happy to see him live. Sure, he's a horrible bastard and deserves death 1,000 times over, but there is that part of me that has this sick fascination to see what he could do next in the MCU. He feels like he could be the next big bad of the franchise. That's how awesome he was in this movie. And that's something that I've actually noticed a lot with the MCU lately. After years and years of fans complaining about the MCU's lack of interesting villains, the Multiverse Saga has decided to address those complaints by pulling out incredible bad guys. Villains that, at times, overshadow their heroic counterparts like Namor in Wakanda Forever and Gore the God Butcher in Love and Thunder. And the High Evolutionary is yet another example of one of those villains. But he feels bigger than just another villain in a Marvel movie. Now, with a lot of controversy surrounding the Kang character at the moment, it does kind of feel like this movie could have potentially set up the High Evolutionary as his replacement for the rest of the Multiverse Saga. Am I expecting that to happen? No, not at all. I still think that Kang is going to be the big bad for the next decade or so. But it seems like each section of the MCU does have its own version of a big bad, and to me, the High Evolutionary might be the biggest. Earth's political section of the MCU has Namor to look out for. The Spider-Man section has Venom whenever he meets Peter. The multiverse has Kang overseeing it as he looks to conquer as much as possible. And now, the outer universe has the High Evolutionary. But that begs the question. Now that we kind of understand his role in the MCU, what exactly could the High Evolutionary do next? Well, I do have a few potential options for him if you hear me for just a little bit. So, we know that the High Evolutionary has probably lived for a very long time. Despite looking like a 40-year-old man with the worst facelift in cinematic history, you get the vibe that he's been around for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, with Gamora even recognizing him as a god for many cultures across the universe. So I think it'd be pretty interesting if he was revealed as the creator of several different civilizations that we've already met. Sure, it's a long shot, but I think it'd be pretty interesting if he was revealed as the creator of a group like the Skrulls. After all, that Nick Fury Secret Invasion show will be coming out in less than a month, which is seemingly going to be all about the Skrulls. Imagine if there was some throwaway line where the Skrulls say something like, "Oh yeah, hundreds of years ago we believed in a god called the High Evolutionary, but we evolved past him." It would be such a little thing, absolutely, but it would pop me at least. Or perhaps he created the Chitauri all those years ago. The High Evolutionary being retroactively responsible for the invasion of Earth in the first Avengers movie? That would be so fascinating. From what I can find, they seem to be a sort of offshoot species of the Skrulls. So perhaps the High Evolutionary created the Chitauri by using DNA from the Skrulls. I don't know, it doesn't really feel like something that would change the MCU in any major way, but it would still be an interesting little comment thrown in there just to show how much influence the High Evolutionary has had on the entire universe. I just really love the idea of him having this weird father of the universe vibe. Like, if a lot of past events in the MCU involving aliens could tie back into him, that could be really fun. However, perhaps we don't just have to see him as this father of the universe kind of character for future installments in the MCU. We see in Guardians 3 that he does in fact have a deep and deranged character lingering just underneath this noble goal of his. One that, if played around with, could lead him down a very interesting path. And if we want to tap into those deranged and obsessive character traits as a way to point him into a future direction, then perhaps we should talk about his biggest obsession to date with Rocket Raccoon. You see, by the end of Guardians 3, the High Evolutionary has been completely humiliated by his former test subject. Throughout the movie, he has had one goal: get Rocket back in his possession, to both get his revenge for scarring his face and for his own greater goal of creating that perfect civilization. But none of that happened. Instead, the High Evolutionary would completely crack mentally. He killed his entire council surrounding him. He destroyed an entire planet. His obsession with Rocket made him act deranged, with his mind simply snapping. And when Rocket left him feeling humiliated on his own ship before its subsequent destruction, you have to think that that only broke him even more. So it would be pretty interesting to see how that affects the High Evolutionary moving forward. Does he fall even further down the pit of despair, abandoning himself for the sake of capturing Rocket? Or perhaps he abandons every goal that he has, believing that all hope for a perfect civilization is lost, and that everyone should be punished for their transgressions. After all, if his most successful creature is Rocket Raccoon, then it's kind of hard to think that people can end up being nice, considering Rocket is kind of a dick. Or, and I'm not too sure what you could do with this, but what if he recognizes Rocket's mercy as a sign that there is still good out there, and that his pursuit to create this ultimate civilization has only turned him evil in the long run? Perhaps he can see that his goal to create the perfect civilization has only left him as a shell of a man. I don't know, I just think that there's a lot of stuff you could do with this character that I really hope he returns in the future. Do I expect him to? To be honest, no, not really. But if he does end up as a reoccurring character in the franchise, then I think the High Evolutionary could have potential as a major villain for the MCU. It would be interesting to see him continue his rivalry with Rocket as well, giving the new Guardians something to do for the next film. The High Evolutionary, as we saw in his debut movie, is such an incredible character. His despicable acts of evil are so horrifying and yet so fascinating. And I hope that we could see more of him, as his character could go down so many different directions now. Hell, Red Skull is out there in the universe, so it's possible that the High Evolutionary can continue his time in the MCU as well through some unpredictable means. He could have a really interesting story in the MCU, so let's hope we see more from the High Evolutionary as his influence continues to affect the rest of the universe. Thank you all so much for watching this video. What do you guys want to see from the High Evolutionary in the future? Do you think he'll return, or do you think he's just going to be swept under the rug? Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But until next time, have a good day. Bye-bye.